Time to bring in tonight's Out in the Open panel, Amy Holmes, Republican political strategist, Air America radio host Rachel Maddow, and CNN contributor Roland Martin. Welcome back. How ashamed should we all be when we hear these numbers? 1 in 3 people living in Washington, D.C. are functionally illiterate.
I can tell you as a resident of Washington, D.C., a longtime resident, it is a disaster. And it starts with the elementary school system. In the 4th grade, only 10% of 4th graders in Washington, D.C. are proficient at reading. Only 6% can do math at the 4th grade level. We're talking about 94% of students can't do a multiplication table. So it's no wonder then, as you go on through the years, that you do have these high rates of illiteracy. It's a complete, utter disaster. This is our nation's capital. Our education system should be a model, not at the bottom of the heap.
Who's to blame for this?
Well, it's 1 in 3 in Washington, D.C. It's 1 in 5 nationally. That blew me away in looking at this story. I mean, I feel like there are some really fundamental things we're not attending to as a nation. And if the literacy rates are the first thing that we pay attention to, good. But we've got a lot of really fundamental stuff that we have let go. As a rich country, we're not investing in education. We're not investing in our own infrastructure. We're not investing in our own healthcare system. All the stuff that we need to take care of ourselves as a nation and be competitive in the world, we're really letting slide the basics.
I think part of the issue is you get back to basics. I think when it comes to education, we've tried to be very cute, and we've tried to focus on many of the highbrow things, but it's very simple. Reading, writing, arithmetic, everything that we were told when we were kids, that what was stressed. And
so you're not, are you saying it's not as much a function of the funding and the fact that we wandered
the issue is not
the
funding.
basic
Washington, D.C.
has
spends
the highest spending per capita per pupil, over $13,000. But what Washington, D.C. did do, because of its sort of unusual organization there, is that the federal government in 2004 passed a voucher program, $7,500 per student, putting the power back in the hands of families, because parental involvement in education is the #1 indicator of academic success. And now that program is hugely popular. We're just now doing the studies to find out if it's successful, but parents are clamoring for this type of help.
What voucher programs do, though, is that they give local communities an opportunity, a great opportunity, to completely give up on their public education. They say, you don't like your public education? Don't get involved. Opt out. Do something private. Relieve the government and relieve our communities of the responsibility
in the case of Washington,
to educate every kid.
The money, specifically in Washington, D.C., money went to the public school system so that none of that money would be drained with the vouchers.
First and foremost, when it comes to even vouchers, we have to be honest about something. You can have a charter school that is still a part of the education system and still use vouchers. It's different if you're saying go from public to private. I think what we have to do when it comes to education is we have to, first of all, stop social promotion, stop passing people. I mean, Dexter Manley was a perfect example with the Houston Yates High School, where I graduated from. He was a little bit earlier than me, and he was passed through. There are a lot of people who actually went through that. Many of the people who were probably a part of this study in Washington, D.C. probably went through the school system where they simply just kept passing them along, and they were not able and they graduated or they got a GED. It happens, and so we have to get that serious and stop ignoring the stats of 3rd and 4th grade reading skills, because it's going to get worse if you don't fix it then.
And the one thing we can't ignore is the shame of this problem. We as reporters have all interviewed people who've been illiterate. I'll never forget talking to a 30-year-old woman who simply couldn't even put a phone number, can fit a phone number on a piece of paper because she didn't know how to write out the numbers. Talk about the very devastating personal toll this takes on people who've tried to help themselves.
Sure, I mean,
through no fault of their own, haven't moved ahead.
I have an uncle who was the same way, who did not read till his late 40s, and to one of my other aunts who was teaching him how to read. And so to go through life where you're doing manual labor, where you are operating in a manufacturing sort of job, it's different when all of a sudden those jobs are gone. Now what do? You can't simply rely on your hands. Now you have to be able to process information, and that's where it reaches critical mass.
It's all so sad.
It is, and we see that it plays out generationally as well.
Unfortunately. Stay with me. We've got a lot more to talk about. Will you guys hang around? Oh, good.
We'll think about it.
Oh, don't think about it. You're coming back. Back to our Out in the Open panel right now. Amy Holmes, Republican political strategist, CNN contributor Roland Martin, and Air America radio host Rachel Maddow. Let's get straight to some of these confessions Mohammed made, particularly about his role in the murder of Daniel Pearl. He said, I decapitated with with my blessed right hand the head of the American Jew, Daniel Pearl. This is even hard to read out loud. There are pictures of me on the internet holding his head. But Pearl's own parents have expressed doubts about his so-called confession, saying it's impossible to know at this point whether Khalid Sheik Mohammed's boast about killing our son has any bearing in truth. Clearly, they have reason to be skeptical, shouldn't we?
The Pakistani government certainly is skeptical. They've got somebody else on death row for having done that. The litany of things that Khalid Sheik Mohammed confessed to almost gets comical when you start getting to the number of things that he said he was involved in working at. He maybe was Superman, but I mean, even before we got this confession, the people who had been interrogating him had said he is prone to self-aggrandizement. I wish that we had a system for bringing these suspects to justice where we could trust what they're saying. Instead, what we've got is the kangaroo court system that's set up at Guantanamo, allegations of torture that seem quite credible given what we know about waterboarding and other things in this administration, and we can't believe a word he said. It's a shame, and we'll never be able to recover from it.
Do you have reason to believe torture was involved in extracting any of this information about him,
well,
whether true or not?
Is that the CIA did say that he did undergo waterboarding and that he lasted longer than any of the top 12 al-Qaeda suspects that had been waterboarded. 2.5 minutes.
We should explain what waterboarding is.
Right, which is to give the detainee the sensation of being drowned. And so a piece of cellophane is put over the mouth and water is put over the face to give that frightening, sensation. It was very controversial. It is no longer used as an interrogation technique. But when you ask the question, is he mastermind, master liar, I think we know that he's both. That we do have information from electronic records, other al-Qaeda operatives, that he was very much a mastermind of the 9/11 plan. Is he also a liar? Yes. He has a lot of reason to be a liar because he started confessing very early, giving our authorities information that led to, as Peter Bergen, your own CNN expert, said, led to al-Qaeda being on the ropes by 2003. So his interest in claiming torture and claiming responsibility for all of this is to enlarge himself within the al-Qaeda organization.
And we can't believe a word he said, and there's nothing about the system that leads us to any credible information. The military justice system is an absolute failure for us.
And Paula, this is the fundamental issue when you have torture. If I wanted to bring this back to the States, in Chicago, that was the Burge incident where Lieutenant Commander John Burge was over a particular unit, Area 2 in Chicago, where allegations they tortured up to 200 individuals. These folks were sent to jail. They were prosecuted, some served 18, 20 years. The problem is we want to believe our military. We want to believe our justice system, but when you do have someone who has been tortured, where there have been allegations, it casts doubt. The fact that we are sitting here having a conversation is part of the problem. Now, he admitted to 31 different plots. Let's say, okay, he was involved with 20 of them, but the fact of the matter is, people are questioning it, and when you begin to question, that is what casts doubt. That's why, as Americans, we want to be above board, be above torture, so we can believe when we're getting information from our own government.
Can you trust the way our government is handling the interrogations in Guantanamo now?
I trust that they're trying to do the best job they can to get good information, because remember, at the end of the day, at the end of the day, what they're trying to do is get to the bottom of the al-Qaeda terrorist plots. He confessed methods, ways to do this that are ongoing, a dozen terrorist plots at one time. What we do know is that it was successful, that we were able to apprehend other al-Qaeda operatives, and that we were able to get this organization on the run.
We don't know about the success, and the question is the ends and the means is important. Lindsey Graham and Carl Levin went to Khalid Sheik Mohammed's hearing. After they went to it, they said, we want an investigation into what he said happened to him. One of the things he said happened to him was not only torture. He says his 7-year-old son and his 9-year-old son were abducted and mistreated as a means of the United States government getting to him.
And
if we're picking up
the very point that our own military is saying that we can't believe everything he has to say, which means that they are not trying to trump up confession charges.
You can't say that it doesn't matter what we're doing because we're trying to get al-Qaeda. It matters what we do. We're America. That's more important than al-Qaeda.
And we have got to move on. Thank you. A lot more work to do here tonight.